Hello and welcome to the One Life Church Devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. The chapters today, Deuteronomy 21 and Romans chapter 6, explore the concept of slavery. Now, Sue and I have been married for 29 years, and after a couple has been married that long, you sort of figure out what each other are good at, and you pretty much do that stuff. So I do the gardening, I do the cars, I do the house maintenance, I do the finances, I do that sort of thing. Sue is far better at other things, and so we've had like this division of labor come into our marriage where we sort of separate what we bring to the party. But there is one category of thing that falls sort of in the middle. It's the kitchen. I'm standing here in this point of dispute. You see, I am so bad in the kitchen. I can basically do some scrambled eggs if I have to, and I can normally organize some toast without burning it, but that is it. And Sue is much better at this, but she doesn't enjoy it. In fact, I hear this common phrase over and over again: I feel like a slave in the kitchen. So one of the best things I can do for Sue is to take her out for dinner or to buy some stuff to bring in to the house that's already been cooked, because this is a symbol of slavery to her. Now, in Deuteronomy 21, it says this: when you go into the promised land and you defeat the enemy and you take a foreign wife, she must not be treated as a slave. Give her dignity. This chapter is about dignity. Even when someone's getting executed, take them down off the execution rack on the same day. Give them dignity in their death. It deals with the issue of an unsolved murder case. What do you do when you don't know who committed the murder? Well, bring in the headman of the village, bring in the leadership, and say to them, you have to swear that you know nothing about it, that you've got no clues, leave no stone unturned. In other words, it also deals with the hectic case of a rebellious son. And as we said, as we looked at the rest of Deuteronomy, this is Moses laying down the law that supervised the conduct of Israel as they were set apart from other nations. And as the law is wont to do, it shows you that you're imperfect, shows that you are actually not much better than your neighbors. So in Romans chapter 6, Paul continues to unpack his understanding of the gospel. And he uses these two metaphors: death and slavery. And he basically says this: if you have been crucified with Christ, which is what verse 2 says, then sin has finished its work on you. You're dead, just like Jesus died. It says here, for you have been united with him in his death like this, you will certainly also be united with him in his resurrection. And so let's say sin is like a cancer, and it eventually gets you, and dead. It's over, and it's terrible, and that's the consequence of sin, death. But not only have you been united with Christ in his death, you see, Jesus died under the sin of the world. You have been resurrected with him. You have victory over it, and no more can it terrorize you, threatening you with terminal annihilation. Can't do that anymore. But he says that's not the only picture. So the position you have in Christ is that you are seated with him, resurrected with him. Sickness, death, sin no longer has an eternal mastery over you. But you're living in this mortal body as spiritually resurrected, but you're living in this mortal body, and sin can still come against you. And now he says what you can do as someone who is not going to suffer the eternal consequences of death, you can still play with death. And he says, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to play with sin? Because the very last verse in this chapter says the wages of sin is death. Why do you want to live as dead people? Why do you want to live with the consequence of death when you don't have to? And he says it's like being a slave. He says here, I am using this as an example in everyday life because of your human limitations. You're not fully grasping what I'm saying to you. Just as you used to offer yourselves as slaves to impurity and ever-increasing wickedness, now offer yourselves as slaves to righteousness. He says, listen, the end game is sorted. Your position in Christ is secure. You have got life eternal. So the rest of the time you spend here on earth, live with that reality. Don't play with sin. Because if you're playing with sin, you're gonna look like you're dying in various areas of your life when you don't have to, because it hasn't got mastery over you. The two pictures. One, you're dead to sin. The long-term ramifications are dealt with. The war is won. But the battle that we go through every day, he says, this is what you've got to do. You've got to enslave yourself to Jesus, and you have the will to, because the power of sin is broken over you because you're a believer in Jesus. That's the wonder of the gospel. So positionally, for all eternity, we are freed from sin, but day to day, to live as free men, we don't enslave ourselves to sin again. Don't yoke yourself to the thing you don't want to do. Enslave yourself to Jesus.